having issues, but go ahead.
Dave looks like every commo man I've ever worked with.
I wish I were
bloody earphones on, and they're talking in some kind of warble with London, and they got the barbed wire fence being loaded up as a reflector. What are you doing? I'll be back with you later.
All right, guys, we are live. This is episode 76 of the Team House. I'm Jack Murphy here with co-host over this area, Dave Park. We are here today with our guest, Nick Brokhausen, a Vietnam veteran, served in MACV-SOG, doing clandestine operations across the fence. He is the author of Whispers in the Tall Grass. Dave, you have We Few? That's his first book, We Few. And then he has a new one coming out later on this year in 2021 that we're going to talk about a little later. So, Nick, welcome to the show. How are you?
Fine. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We really appreciate it. And I just want to say up front that you are probably the most requested guest we've had. I've had so many people hit me up saying you got to have Nick Brokhausen on the show. So you are a fan favorite from the get-go.
How many of them told you I owed them money?
None of them. They read your books and they really enjoyed them. That's why they were.
That's what they all say.
That's how they get their foot in the door.
That's how they get you.
Right, that's right. Yeah. Hey, you owe me a Rolex.
So, Nick, really the first way we usually get started on this show, other than having a few whiskeys, is we ask our guest what their origin story is. If you were, Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider, how did you find your way into Special Forces? How did that whole deal come about?
Well, it was a dark and stormy night, underneath the 5,000 watt radio station. I grew up in Minnesota, and we basically, I grew up in North Dakota and Minnesota on farms, and in old America, where everybody learned how to do things like fix a carburetor, and we did a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, and it seemed natural. In those days, when your country called, you went. Mm-hmm. It wasn't any question. You got a draft notice, or didn't like the draft notice, you enlisted in the Air Force, and whatever you wanted to do. So I graduated into the military, basically at the base level of a rifleman, and went through my first combat tour was as a rifleman, and I was laying on the side of the road trying to decide whether I was going to actually re-enlist, and I saw this feller coming up the road, some tall, long, lanky-looking feller in tiger stripe fatigues, carrying a Swedish K with a silencer on it, and he had like about 40 of what looked like brigands behind him with all this man jewelry hanging all over him, knives, grenades, and that. Asked the sergeant, I said, what's that? And he goes, well, that's one of those snake eaters. I said, what's that? He goes, well, Green Berets, Special Forces. I said, where's their officers? And he goes, they don't have any. So I knew exactly where I was going to go after that. So I made that path that we all made to get into Special Forces. There was a lot different in those days. One thing I can tell you, if you get caught with a rucksack full of cantaloupe in Camp McCall that you snuck out, purloined from a field and brought back to the other rats in your tent, if you get caught, you will eat all of them. And you will probably have diarrhea for about 3 years. So things were different in those days. I think the last time I went down to McCall years ago, and that I was just amazed at the place and what they were doing there, the different programs and that. So I went through all that. When I went back to Nam, I basically got shanghaied by a friend. I was supposed to go to the Mike Force, which is a nice place because there's 240 other targets out there for the Oriental gentlemen to shoot at rather than just you. And I sent this guy, Bernie O'Connell, to check on our orders, and he came back and he goes, I got us a really good deal. And when one of your friends says something like that, the first thing that happens, pucker. What's his deal? He said, it's an all volunteer outfit and people are in line to get into it. Right there, that's a lie. Right there, I said, what's the name of it? And he goes, it's MACV-SOG, and the place we're going to is CCN. And it was like somebody shoved a hot electrical wire up my anus. Because I had met a couple of guys that had come back from there, like Hardy Bachelor's brother, who was mad as a March hare. And they were good combat troops in that, but it was like everybody avoided them like they were lepers. So anyway, we ended up going up to Da Nang and got dialed in up there. And, for the next several months, I had the joy of running Recon.
So you got put in Command and Control North. Could you tell us about getting introduced to your team? Getting introduced to, were they Montagnards? Were they Nungs? Who were the Indians you worked with?
RT Habu. I first got introduced to the Americans when I got there because Captain Manus decided I was a smartass and said, well, I'm just going to put you in there with two Southerners and see how smartass you are. So I ended up on RT Habu, and Montagnards for that team were all brute. Most of what we used up in Command and Control North were Sedang, Brew, Rade, and some Jirai, very few Jirai, then Vietnamese and some Cambos and Nungs, Chinese Nungs. And so the teams were made up of, you usually didn't have a mix of Nungs and Montagnards or Nungs and Vietnamese. It was, if you had a Nung team, you had a Nung team. Hendricks had a Nung team. He could never pronounce their names, so he named them after Daffy Duck's nephews. Huey, Dewey, Louis, all that. And Louis could speak perfect American English. And he was always trying it out on people like donut dollies. And it was ugly every time. So, usually the teams were based on whatever ethnicity that you were running. Brew, Sedang. The Sedang are cool because they file their teeth. So they look like wolves when they smile at you.
Good Lord.
Now, when you talk about...
Well, they're from the Central Highlands. Yeah.
When you talk about the Brew and the Sedang and them, those are all various tribes of the Montagnards?
Oh, yeah. It's the Daga people, Dagan. And, what's odd about them is they're an old people going back Neolithic. They actually have in their lore, their verbal lore, of hunting elephants with long hair. So they originated up in China somewhere, and then as everybody came in, they gradually compressed them down into the peninsula in Indochina.
That's amazing.
And the Hmong are related to them. I used to have this book which I loved. It was all the tribes, all their cultural things, and that. And somebody swiped it from me at a party one night. It was actual FM. That really? Yellow cover with the FM 24-1 Squirrel 5, the usual stuff. But it was a great book, And the Montagnards are an amazing people, just right out of the Iron Age. Imagine that warrior culture from the Iron Age, and then you stumble in there with all these man toys like machine guns and grenades and that. Oh, popular guy.
And some of these guys had been fighting for quite a while, right? You mentioned in We Few that some of them had served with the French Foreign Legion during the Indochina War. They spoke French, they spoke German.
Yeah, Bong, our thump gunner, was also a shaman. And he had fought with Force 36, the Legion group, the strike group that went north trying to relieve Dien Bien Phu and that, as a striker at the age of 15.
Wow.
And here we are in Vietnam in 70, and, you know, he's still plodding up and down the mountain, hardcore. And they just basically were trying to survive, you know, and everybody was fighting around them, and they got dragged into it. My yard team leader, Kuhlman, had been fighting the communists for 12 years. And he'd already lost a family. They'd come into his village and butchered his wife and kids. So he had no love for them.
Yeah.
Then the brewer brew, man. I mean, no matter whether they're like, we recruited Bond out of the POW camp next door. He was a former NVA sapper commander, but he was brew. And the brew go, hey, he wants to come over and fight with us. Hey, you trust him? I'll trust him. Well, I trust you guys, except with my money on my rations.
Was that fairly common to find Montagnards who had been with the NVA for whatever reason? And
well, we had Chuhoys too. You know, there was a huge POW camp right next door to CCN.
Uh-huh.
We used to get drunk and then go take CS grenades and shoot them into the compound just to keep the MPs and them on their toes. But that's who overran the camp in 1968. The sappers came in from the sea, a company, and their plan was to kill as many Americans as they could, take the arms and arm the POW camp next door, and then just sweep into Da Nang and some kind of concerted effort.
Yeah. So you arrive at, as you refer to it as Chuckle North, and so when you get there, how is that different than how you'd been trained? Because you had just been through the Q course, you had just gotten trained up as SF, right? Or you'd
Wait, I mean, later on, I talked to guys from your generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the generation before that, you know, that were between me and you. And they go, well, what kind of selection course did you go to? I went through SF training because it basically was just another assignment. Yeah. The only difference was it was voluntary. And they didn't tell you why it was voluntary until you got there and found out what you'd be doing. And at that point, you're screwed. Who's going to go, well, you know, I really don't think this is for me, and that, you know, and get off the truck.
Right.
So you get shuffled down to Recon company, and next thing you know, some gentlemen are walking out there patting you on the cheek and going, take this bag of grenades with you. You might need them.
Yeah. You said that peer pressure was huge.
Fairly quickly.
I'm sorry. You said that peer pressure was a huge motivator while you're there, right? I mean, and it's not just peer pressure. It's you're there with brothers in arms and the desire to perform to standard. So when you show up at a unit like that, whatever your expectations were or weren't, did you find that everybody who showed up there, or almost everybody who showed up there, just put in maximum effort, especially since the high casualty rates and everything like that?
You were in the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peer pressure. You know, and I like to think we invented it and gave it to you kids. But, you know, and that lineage goes a long way back. I never wanted to be anything but special forces. When, you know, I mean, that was the epitome of, well, first of all, I read in Playboy magazine, with like 1965, that the most wanted person to be at a party in Hollywood was a Green Beret. And I figured that was my path to hanging out with women who didn't complain about the way I smelled. So, I mean, it was just like being a Ranger, you know. And I knew all the early Rangers. When you guys got the ribbon, the 75th Ranger ribbon, and that came out of Vietnam. And usually they had, I think it was a company with each division, and like four different companies. Or Zabatowski, who was one of our Medal of Honor winners, was also in the Rangers there. Tommy Shook was in the Ranger Hall of Fame, who should have been arrested for littering, was in that group. Clem Lemke, you You know, a lot of good guys, you know, and that's what formed up the heart of that. And you know how it is in the Ranger battalions. You're just not going to say no.
Right.
I mean, you have to be scared. Everybody's scared crapless. Is that good enough? Are we getting with the censors?
No,
Okay.
we're all good.
Yeah. Jack was just kidding when he said this was PG-13. You can say whatever you want. We
Really?
Yeah. We are marked.
Yeah, you can.
You can.
Fuck, shit, ass, cockballs, pussy.
Yeah. These two youngsters don't know what they wandered into, have they? Yeah, well, so to answer your question, that, you know, once you got there, I think of, we had guys that quit because it was voluntary. And like I said on my interview on C-SPAN, and that, there's no stain against their honor. Because once you realize what you were doing, it's not for everybody.
Right.
You know, there's people that choked up, couldn't, you know, and guys that ran 3 or 4 missions and were doing fine, and they finally hit that one bright light where you're down to your last 8 rounds of ammunition, you're shot, the guy you went in to get shot, you're trying to make your perforated ass back to the helicopter. And that was it. You know, it just stopped it.
Yeah, you wrote about that in Whispers in the Tall Grass too. A few different guys you knew who it was time they punched out. They were like, "I'm done," and you were like, you know, that's the mature decision to make at that point when you've really, you know, your nerves are frayed to that point.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. We had a really good guy, former Marine, did all right because, you know, he'd been in combat before and that, but just when we got on the ground, we came back and the yard team leader said, he's not going out with us again. Because if he goes out with us again, we're going to kill him. That it just, if the yards didn't like him, he was out. And he went from there to become the best AST that we had up at the top. The guy who brings you your target folder and tells you, this is the intel for the last 5 years. You know, these are after action reports and that. Really good guy. Really good guy. But, you know, the yards made the decision, no, you know, we don't trust him like you, Chauncey. That's, of course, because he didn't owe him any money. You know?
So tell us then about, you know, your first mission with MACV-SOG. I mean, you get on the ground, boots on the ground, get introduced to your team. What's the job?
Well, first of all, the other half of my soul is a guy named Lemuel McLaughlin. And I pronounce it Lemuel, although he pronounces it Lemuel. And he's a little short Alabama gator runner and that. And he's the other half of my soul. So we bonded right from the beginning. And it was, I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, it's either you do or you don't. You don't click or you do click. So we'd done a couple of training things, you know, where went out to cover somebody doing something out, you know, west of Da Nang, came back. And then my first real recon mission was in a place called DM-10. DM-10 is demilitarized zone target number 10, which is a huge extinct caldera. And it's got the spine crater all the way around except on one side and a trail coming up the middle of it that was probably meter and a half wide. Excuse me. And we dropped in. Yeah, we'd read the you know, all the intel data and that there was supposed to be a division in that area. They were all there, right there. So we came in on the LZ, got off. Mac got off the chopper. He was in the chopper ahead of me. He got off the chopper and he fell in the entrance of a bunker, upside down with his rucksack facing down into the hole, and then he's squabbling around like some kind of turtle in that. And the pilot starts to pull pitch and pull out of there. And I told him, put me on the ground. He wouldn't, he kept doing it. So I shoved a gun in the back of his helmet to put me on the ground. he can't fight with 3 guys. We can fight with 7. So they put us on the bunker, and about 20 minutes, we were working all the air we could find. Everything Cubby could call up. I mean, the fast movers, A1Es, you name it, just to get our sorry ass out of there. So that was my baptism of fire, and I came back. And Mac told me, he goes, the yards like you. And I go, why? He says, because you scream when you're shooting. So that bonded me to the team.
That's awesome. How was
different war, you know?
How is that different than your experience as a rifleman with the infantry?
Well, you never know where you're going. You have no idea where you're going. You walk and you plod, and people shoot at you, and people fall down beside you, and you get up and repeat the whole process over again. You know, and that gets scary. So the major difference is, and whatever, whether you're a Marine or Army rifleman or the grunt, that's your life. Misery, cold, and heightened moments of sheer terror. Interspaced with, gee, I hope I don't forget what women smell like.
So you do the first mission, and Mac, I guess, tells you that they want to take you on something easy for your first mission, right?
Well, that was easy.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go on an easy mission, and the team ahead of us got shot up running a bright light on another team, so they moved us into their slot with the target. We were supposed to be just south of there in another 6x6 no bomb box. And since you were down here and you studied the intel, and that is pretty much the same up here. I mean, where you put the overlays on, you can't see the contour lines because of the enemy unit. Oh, yeah. So that's how we got the target.
So for people who haven't read your book yet, because I'm sure they will after this, what is a bright light team?
A bright light team, in the beginning, they used the hatchet companies. Which were set up pretty much like the Mike Force, shock troops go in, do raids, do ambushes, do rescues, whatever. And it eventually became too complicated because there's too many of them to haul in and haul out. So we started running our own, what we call bright light, which is basically a rescue mission. You have a team on the ground that's so shot up that it can't get to the helicopters on its own, or they just need to be beefed up so you can shoot your way up. And normally in the normal rotation of things was that you would leave Da Nang, go to the launch site either in Phu Bai or in Quan Tri, and sometimes they send teams up there to do nothing but bright light. And they were usually heavy teams that were running 8, 10, 12, 15 people. And then later it got to be, you were on the draw. You got a mission, there's 3 teams up there. When one goes in, the other 2 act as a bright light. And then when he comes out, they switch places and that until they rotate the teams back to Da Nang and bring up a new batch of lucky winners for their lottery. And it's complicated. We developed a lot of tactics that you guys use later. Things like you got to clear everything in front of me, so you use the air. Use them dropping hard bombs, dropping napalm, don't drop CBU because you may have to walk through it later. The ones that didn't go off will. But use air support to clear the area in front of you, or blow an LZ that's closer to the team because you can't possibly drag them 1.5 kilometers to the only LZ in the area. I never went in and repelled it. I always went in on something that was either an old bomb crater or was big enough to get one ship in. And a lot of times we we blew LZs with using the Claymore with the ring main, made it with, the dead cord in between. And you drop the trees, and it still doesn't make a flat landing place. I don't care what Hollywood says. A Claymore does not clear off the tree and the ground and make it look like it was manicured. There's big splinters of shit sticking up that the helicopter guys don't like. So, but the bright light's basically a rescue mission. You go in, shoot your way in. Hopefully you don't have to shoot your way in. Air support has suppressed them enough to hold them back. But if you have to, you shoot your way in, gather up all the wounded and dead, try and drag your perforated carcass back to the helicopter.
When you talk about the bright light teams and shooting your way in, can you tell us a little bit about like the statistics of MACV-SOG and particularly like CCN? Like, I don't think people understand just how lethal that assignment could be.
Lethal?
Yeah, just what the life like how well in terms of how risky it was for you guys.
I've watched a lot of war movies. The closest depiction I saw of what actual combat is like is Saving Private Ryan. I mean, the photography on that and how they followed, and the sound, the sound of a high velocity round going past your mortal coil sounds like a crack. And the louder it sounds, the closer it is to your mortal coil. But there's so much noise on a battlefield, especially in the situations that we were in, because we were using air power to save ourselves, to soften them up, back them off, get them to the point where we could do the rescue or whatever. Or if you were a recon team and they'd run your ass to the ground, they're trying to kill you, you bring in as much air support as you can. God bless the aviators. Don't ever tell anybody I said this. They saved our cookies on so many occasions. And, when we started the Special Operations Association, we were only letting associate members in, people that had been in the Marquis in World War II. Because originally the SOA was for recon only. Some of you guys forgot that. And then it changed into all of SOG. And the first people we let in were the aviators, because they flew us in, and then they were dumb enough to come back and pick us up. So we considered them brothers in arms in that. And it really wasn't that. They combined arms, the tactics and the way of working that we developed through our missions went a long ways, all the way into Desert Storm, and beyond. To say, and I'm happy to say, I didn't write the book. Tilt Meyer wrote the book. And if you want to blame somebody, blame him.
Where's Tilt? Here's Tilt. We've had Tilt on the show before.
Perfect. Hi, Tilt. Hope you're enjoying wherever you're at.
He's doing good. He moved to Nashville, I think. He's in Tennessee.
I was trying not to give that up. Sure, these guys are operators.
I'm bad. But no, John's doing real well.
Yeah, I talked to him this afternoon.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So I hope I cast some illumination on it. Didn't ramble on too long.
No, not at all. I was amazed at. You said that while you were there, or when you first arrived, that they lost like a team and a half or something like that, and
it was shortly after.
Yeah,
it was like within before the month was up. When I got there, we arrived and there was CCM was this big compound right on the sea, right? Uh-huh. And at the front part of it, facing the hardball, was a perforated steel plate landing field. When I drove in the gate, there was a Cobra helicopter burning at the far end, was still on fire. And I looked at Bernie, who was the guy who got us the assignment. he goes, I said, Bernie, this doesn't look like one of those show camps you were talking about. This looks like it might be a little more serious.
So you talk about the bright light teams, and your second mission was actually as a bright light, correct?
We did bright lights all the time.
Okay.
I mean, you were there to run Recon.
Right.
And the way that was organized, and like I said, after a while, the hatchet companies couldn't keep up with the tactics that the North Vietnamese were using. Because we were there. We were shooting, fighting with them and all that. We knew how they were going to operate, especially when they came in with anti-recon units. They would run your ass down and kill you. They'd use the green troops to take casualties to get close enough to get on your belt buckle, and then they'd kill you. And they were all, these were tough guys. We found out later, most of them were NCOs. Well, they'd taken them from other units, handpicked them and that, put them in special formation. The good thing about Mr. Chuck, he was on the learning curve all the time. And if you weren't, you were dead.
Yeah. All right, so then we move on. I'm just kind of going by your book, if you don't mind. The Bandit Brandy.
Bandit Brandy. I knew these little suckers were going to come up with it.
Oh, the titles?
Well, Bandit Brandy, I actually went to Taiwan, and I got a book on Merrill's Marauders, because they have no copyright laws there. I bought hundreds of books, and I was shipping them back to my brother right from Taiwan when I went over on R&R. Well, actually, go over on the CCK flight so it doesn't count as an R&R, which was when they sent the Blackbirds over that we were using there. They were getting, they check your oil, wipe the windshield, do all that shit. And then they'd be 5 days in Taiwan. So I got this book, and it was about Merrill's Marauders, and they were talking about when they brought them back from the Kakima airfield fight. They were all malarial and shot to shit. And they brought them back to a rest area, which was by a stream. And everybody was washing, getting back into eating food and not being shot at all the time. And they gave the officers a bottle of liquor each, whiskey, scotch, whatever they had. And the enlisted men got 2 cans of stale 3-2 beer per man. And while they were in the rest area, so they had been with the natives long enough. The natives were telling them, well, you make Bandit Brandy. Well, how do you make Bandit Brandy? Well, first you get a lot of tropical fruit. Well, first thing you get is a 55-gallon gas drum. You put it in that fast-moving stream and throw sand and gravel in there till it scours out the inside so it's like stainless steel. Then you set it up on dry land, dry it out, and you fill it with tropical fruits, guava, banana, monkey shit, whatever. And it goes in there, and then on top of that, they'd put marijuana. And then they would cap it. You remember that old plastic from World War II, that real thick plastic they used to use for bunkers and shit like that?
That's a little bit before my time, Nick. I'm sorry.
They would cap it with that, and then tie it up, tape it up, whatever they did in those days, and put it out in the hot sun and let it bake for about 5 days. When the black plastic swelled up so it was kind of a gray-looking balloon on the top of it, they would pop it, pull all the marijuana out of the top, put it on a perforated steel plate, let it dry out for the natives' consumption later, and then they would drink it. It was called Bandit Brandy. Now, they put each officer's bottle of liquor went in there too, the scotch, the bourbon, the vodka, the gin. And I decided to recreate that. And we made it on a Thursday. It was because the weather was socked in the AO. We were closed down for like a week and a half. And that was up north. So no teams are going up to Quantria and that. So we made this concoction up. I remember getting a canteen cup full of this stuff on a Friday afternoon. I woke up in the minefield on the east end of the camp, stark naked, with that canteen cup, and it was still about a quarter full. And everybody in the camp was looking for it. Who did that? Nick did this. You know, a bunch of little rats. So it was an interesting experience. And better than the stuff. You know, the yards used to make this thing out of rice wine. Rice, you know, they keep pouring Mompe, they keep pouring in water. The more water they put in, the drunker you get. This stuff was better than that. Much better than that. I had Captain Manus tell me well, he started off with scoundrel, and I went to demon within about 3 sentences.
Now, was this about the same time that you woke up someplace you didn't expect to wake up?
Woke up in the morgue. That was like a weekend later.
Wait, how did you wake up in a morgue?
Oh, God. Well, Dr. Cottrell, who's actually a staff surgeon, I got, first thing you learn in Recon, don't get drunk and stay in the Recon club. You may end up as part of a Nordic funeral in a boat made out of blown up prophylactics and rubber gloves. Or you could end up like me in the morgue. So I'm freezing. I came out of whatever alcoholic stupor I was in at the time. And I'm freezing. I'm going, oh, the little shits locked me in the meat lock. So I went to sit up. It was dark. Went to sit up. My head hit the top of whatever I was in within a couple of inches. And about the time I was recovering, and I was inside a plastic bag. And I'm going, what have they done with my mortal coil? So about that time, the thing behind me clicks, and the shelf rolls out, and I'm in the morgue on one of the shelves, and there's a black Spec 4 who's got a clipboard, and he's writing down the toe tags of all the dead that are in there. And I rolled out, and I sat up, and that's the last time I saw him. He disappeared so fast, he dissipated. Gone. And about a minute after that, all these nurses and doctors come running in with the paddles and everything, and they're going, hold still, we want to make sure get away from me. I got a tray that was laying, the guy who had the clipboard, his tray was laying on the floor, and I'm holding off the doctors and the nurses going, get away from me. Well, what had happened is I had passed out, and they took me down to the morgue, put me in a body bag, and slammed me in one of the drawers and that. And my toe hurt so bad. It was like swollen to 6 times its size because there was a toe tag, and on the corpse, you put the cause of death and date, action, and all that. And they had twisted the wire down with a pair of pliers, so it cut off all my circulation of my toe. So it was like this big around. And I'm trying to limp around with that toe tag on, and I was looking at it, and the cause of death was bomb. And I'm going, I was in a bomb? What if I'll get some off time? Do I get to go on, what do they call that, when you're not available for work? Profile. Can I go on profile? Yeah. Then they, on to add insult to injury, they sent Stevie Comerford with me to pick me up. He was an E8. And Stephen Comerford had a plate in his head. And he also had orders from doctors never to use alcohol, pharmaceuticals, or gunpowder. And he was doing all three. He'd gotten a DSC in Korea with the regimental combat team. He was the friend of the guy who went and found his friend that got us into CCM. They'd all been in Korea together. Yeah, that crowd. And they sent him to pick me up. And he looks like a deranged Wolverine. He's like, those little rascals. When you get back, I guess you'll have to have a chat with them. Yeah. When I got back, I was looking for some midget killing hardware. Yeah. I mean, a lot of crazy things go on when you guys were both there. You know what it's like in the zone. It's not like, you guys are different. In fact, we went back a while back, and we were talking to some of you veterans and that, and they were going, wow, you guys did this shit and got away with it? Well, let me tell you something. We wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in your army.
They took all the fun out of
McLaughlin,
it.
when he got to Fort Devens, had 3 DUIs in 3 consecutive nights. The last one, he ran over the MP stand.
These officers have really taken all of the fun out of war, I think. It's just terrible.
They can never take the fun out of war.
They're trying. They're trying.
Well, they try. Just ignore them. Yeah, sure, Lieutenant.
You got anything more on?
Get right on that.
The first one before we go to.
Well, that was one of the things that struck me about your book is that as much as it is about your combat operations, it's also about your shenanigans and yeah, that so much of that stuff would not have flown at all in today's military.
What are you drinking there, brother?
Is that Buffalo Trace? No, Toxic.
What is it? We can see toxic.
Toxic masculinity. It's his whiskey. We'll get into that later.
All right.
Well, I had a lot of people that call me, talk to me, and they go, well, you guys were Jeep stealing, hell raising, heathens. If that's all they got out of the book, they missed the point of it.
Sure.
We did all that, and I've talked to some of you youngsters. I've got some stories about you that ought to be in print.
Lies, followed by more lies.
Yeah. I remember the A-team that found Saddam's son's exotic car collection and were selling it into Germany to the Kurds to pay their intel assets.
That sounds like a made-up story.
No. I know a couple of these rascals.
But no, as you said, Nick, I mean, you're in that place. You're in a war. You got to improvise and overcome. I mean, that's like a super SF thing to do. Like, you got a job to do. How do you get it done?
Yeah, I always considered myself a professional. Most of my commanders considered me as a management nightmare, but I, my generation, and I've seen it amongst the younger generation, we all treat special forces as a way of life, not a job description. It's we were there. They asked us to do something. We came up with ways to do it. We suffered for it. We had the highest casualty rate of any unit in Vietnam, and I know very few people that did a tour there that did not get wounded, or at least wounded more than once.
Yeah.
But you look at the numbers. I think it was like, I've seen varying numbers. I saw like there was 6,800, 7,800 guys that served in ground combat operations in SOG, actual SOG. And out of that, like 1,800 or 1,300 survived the war. So, it's, we lost a lot of good people, but we got done what we set out to do. And that's what inspired me when I stayed in the Army, to stay in Special Forces and try to do just that same thing. And got to tell you, after the war, we did a lot of really exotic things. We went on MTTs to Bolivia and trained the Rinches, the Rangers, to track down the bandits in the hills. We went to Zaire to give a jump master school. That didn't turn out well. Most of those guys are dead now, so it doesn't matter. We did a lot of different things in that. We developed all kinds of different tactics in that. If you follow the lineage of the 10th Special Forces Group, most of them were special projects people. Because Jim Butler, my rat shit brother-in-law, who was the adjutant there, was looking around for, like, Minimac went to Leavenworth as a prison guard. Guys went to become drill sergeants and all that. He reached out for him through Mrs. A and pulled all those guys back into the 10th group. And that's what built the core of the 10th Special Forces Group in the 70s. And Dead A, when I was in Dead A, there were at least 10, 15 guys that had been in CCN, CCS, or whatever. Most of them were problem children that not me serving. all that bad shit happened after I left.
Nick, do you want to tell us about the donut dollies and your fondness for them?
Oh, sure. Yeah, but what are you trying to start a riot? I got enough grief over that. I became the most hated man in Christendom over that. Well, you know, the donut dollies did a lot of good. They did, you know. But you know, I really didn't have all that much interaction with them. That was not on a negative basis. You know, there was, you know, they come out with these stupid games. When I was a rifleman, would come out and there's, you know, round-eyed women. Oh God, 270 smelly beasts and that, you know, and they're up front holding up these little outlines of the state, going, "What state is this?" You know, and the guy who gets it right gets to get an extra donut and a handshake from something that smells better than the rest of them. And yeah, I think that the crown of that was Louis. Remember I was telling you about the Chinese, the Nong? Mm-hmm. That little bastard. We were at the launch site, or up at Quantry, getting ready. I'm trying to leave and go back to Da Nang, because I've already done my bloodletting. And Hendrix's team came in on a C-123 Blackbird, and they had donut dollies on it. And the donut dollies come out. First one actually looked like a horse. She had this face that, I swear to God, looked like a horse. And the other one was some, you know, Rubenesque product from Ohio. And they came off the thing and they were absolutely indignant. Let me find someone to report this to. And they're going past us, and Hendrix and his team comes up. Now, these are all nuns, right? And Hendrix is arguing with Louis, going, "Why did you start that? I mean, what were you thinking of?" Well, what had happened, they were on the plane, and these two women took offense that there were gooks on the plane.
Oh my God.
And why are we flying with these gooks? These gooks do this, these gooks do that. And Louis got up and he goes, "Well, I'm sorry you feel that way about us, but we're going on a particularly dangerous mission. I happen to own a whorehouse in the Trang, and I'm pretty sure I could get more than $5 for the two of you if you had a trapeze in your ass." they screwed right into the ceiling. We're barking at the plane crew or whatever, and when they landed, you know, they went huffing off to get they came back with the MP. We were taking off because the guy on the Caribou goes, "You need to get on now because they're talking to the tower and the MPs are on the way." And we got on, and Hendrix went off to infamy or whatever he was doing with his star English student, and we managed to get back to Da Nang.
Yeah, so the last thing they're expecting is for a Vietnamese or, you know, to stand up in imperfect American English, say a joke like a special forces guy. Like, that must have been shocked.
Years later, I was in New York City with a friend who wanted to introduce me to the Tongs. And we went to the Dragon of Retribution restaurant or whatever. There was a big meeting. We were the only white guys there. And there's three of us. And he goes, "Well, the Tong leader's coming in from Dallas, the big Tong leader." And I'm sitting there at this table with these Chinese fellows and my friend, and the big commotion at the front of the hall, and this guy comes in, everybody's like kissing his hand, bowing to him and everything. And I look up, guess who it is?
No fucking way.
Yep. Yeah. He goes, "Oh, Chung Si." Going, "Oh, this is good. This is not going to be, well, I can front you a kilo if you want."
So when you say the Tongs, you're talking about the Chinese Mafia.
Yeah, well, you know, that's who bought the Nungs out of Vietnam. The Taiwanese Tongs and that. They actually managed to get them out of Vietnam. I probably shouldn't be telling you this on the open line.
Well, you're not telling.
I'm 73. I really don't
World.
give a shit.
Nick,
Yeah.
it's between you, me, Dave, and the internet.
Yeah.
And we won't tell.
Yeah.
These guys are lying. I can tell. They look like fucking radio operators.
Neither of us are smart enough to be radio operators, to be honest with you.
No, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, you know, we'll get into it later, but our book that we wrote together and that is about what we did after we got out of the military.
I'm
And
excited.
and you guys, you know, you got to remember that you're going to make mistakes.
yeah.
If you can atone for your mistakes and keep moving forward, great. If not, get divorced, find a young chick with really, you know, an arthritis problem, you know, and get on with your life. That's what we did.
That's good advice.
Carol Cuddy. Yeah, Carol Cuddy. Ugh.
So, so one of the missions you wrote about in your book was the insertion that you and Mac had where you observed a road repair going on. And then I think kind of on the fly, right, decided to turn that into a prison.
Grab a prisoner?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of the stuff we were doing was trying to find their network. You know, Highway 912, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, was made up of a complex of smaller trails and that. You know, they like built things underneath the canopy. They built false roads so that the air support would be flying looking for trucks, and they're nowhere near that because they're over here. The whole side of the hill's moving. That's all those trucks under leaves and that. And we were doing a lot of area recon to kind of uncover that, find out what the matrix was. Now, the secondary mission was we were trying to find their headquarters. If we could find the headquarters, we could find the high-speed trails. The North Vietnamese weren't stupid. They did a lot of coaxial cable, common line. We did wiretaps, shit like that. But a lot of times they'd send courier. And then we figured if we could grab a courier, we could grab his packet at the same time. And we noticed the road building. We figured out that, you know, we could probably grab a prisoner here. So we called up Covey, told them, we think we're going to interdict this trail. Somebody put some heat on these people. So somebody starts moving around these trails and that. So Covey brought in airstrikes, and those airstrikes scared them up, and they started running the trails. And that's how we grabbed the guy. Eventually lost him, but we grabbed the guy.
Now, when you say you lost him, so you grabbed this guy, airstrikes are going on. How did you exfil?
On strength. We pulled out on strength. And the way we lost him was Kuman cut him loose. They were hanging on the strings together, and the guy bit him in the face, and he just cut his rope. Whee! We went, oh, there goes $700.
Yeah, so you're on
You got a bonus when, like the yards, we get 1 month pay, and you know you get to go to Taiwan for 5 days and take yourself into a stupor and convince yourself to get on the plane and come back.
So you were on.
And these guys are drinking scotch. For Christ's sake, that's a girl's drink.
We're fancy.
Men drink rye, and older, mature men mix it with absinthe.
With absinthe.
Was that?
Yeah, you got more hair on your balls than I do, Nick. I'm not afraid to admit it.
I don't have any hair on my balls. And actually, I don't have any balls. I left them in some woman's purse.
He doesn't have any hair either.
Well, mostly frightening. When I catch the fat naked guy that runs around in my bedroom mirror, I'm gonna.
So
You did say we could say anything,
you can
right?
say anything.
It's on.
It's on. So I think that our viewers would need to understand that when you say you went out on a string, you went out on Stabo basically. You had a harness, and they came and they basically just yanked you. Correct? Is that how that
You're wearing a stable ring, which is basically a parachute harness. I mean, it got simplified. It's not like the B-12 harness and that. It got down to straps and all the basic linkage and that. You bring it up, you hook your legs in, and your butts in, and all your web gear is on that stable ring. All your ammo pouches, all your everything is connected to that, and it's got two D-rings up here that when they throw the string down, it's got two hooks on it that you clap, two snap links you put into there, and then got a 120-foot rope that they lift up through the canopy, and hopefully you fly off like Mary Poppins. That's strings.
And so you get picked up and you're on a different string. You and Mac are on a different string than the prisoner.
Now you're hooked together.
Okay.
When you get on the strings, you're all together, and then you hook snap links into each other.
Okay.
And we figured out we wanted to send the prisoner out first, and we put Kuman and Chua on the strings with them because we were at high altitude. We were up by the ash hill on the west rim, and they were pulling them out. At that altitude, you don't have a lot of lift capability for weight. So there's like 3 yards on it. We said, well, great, we'll get him out, and then we'll come out afterwards. So we had Kuman and Chua and the prisoner, and one other yard, the lightest one, T.T. Lloyd. And then Mac and I and the other 4 yards came out on the second string. So we're hooked together like this, and we see them ahead of us, and all of a sudden, one of the dark spots underneath the helicopter just drops off. What had happened was the guy, he was trussed up with tight, the plastic cuffs and that, and he had gotten this swinging back and forth, and his snap link came loose, and he kicked away from Kuman. And when he came back, he grabbed onto Kuman with his teeth in his face, and bit him right here.
Holy shit!
And Kuman just reached up and took a knife out.
Holy fuck!
Sayonara, straight to the ground. And when we got him on the ground, he's still spitting blood and everything. His face is bleeding. He's going, number 10, BC. No need BC. No need prisoner. Number 10. Okay.
Shit.
That sounds good. For our next trick, we'll go and see if we can kidnap a tank.
So, you went into your book also about how they.
I keep coughing like that, not because I'm a Coke freak.
Because he has COVID.
I have COVID. Yeah.
We don't pry. We don't pry. Whatever you want to share, you can share.
I love this. He looks just like the captain and went, well, we're not here to judge.
You talk about like prisoner fever, where everybody starts getting the bright idea that now every op needs to be is centered around and snatching somebody.
The most valuable prisoner that they grabbed when I was there was grabbed by Eldon Bardwell.
Oh,
you know who Eldon Bardwell is?
Yeah, he's a legend.
I knew him when he was a staff sergeant, and he did not scratch his nuts with a salad fork. Yeah. But Eldon grabbed a prisoner. That was, you know what the prisoner did? Was he a battalion commander, or special ops, or anti-recon? Guess what he did? He was the cook. And he had the roster of all the units that he was supposed to feed.
No shit.
Right down to the last private. They grabbed him with his rosters and his intel and all that. And they knew every unit that was in the bowl of the DM-10. The 309th Hot Rocket Division, Battalion 4, Major Nung, everything. He was a cook.
Unreal.
They never knew what you were going to get. You hope that you get an officer with his, map case and all that stuff. But you might grab some guy that's just some scared private. Well, the two guys that were with that officer were both privates. Both of them were brothers.
Yeah.
And then Eldon also told me he found a place out there that was a message, and born in the north to die in the south. Carved into a tree.
Wow.
I always used to carve in the trees out there. John Wayne is my father. Didn't work.
No. And then I guess one of the last things we'll cover from this book, because I want you to tell the buffalo story, but I want you to tell that like on the.
Did he say that was the last thing?
No.
Are we done already?
No.
Little shit's kicking us off.
Well, look.
But what was the story you wanted me to tell?
Well,
And
later
don't call it a story.
Later,
The factual account of the events on the ground.
well, I would like you later on sort of our exclusive to tell the factual events of the buffalo that you witnessed.
The what?
The buffalo.
Oh,
Yeah. And
no, they're talking about Boudreaux with his fucking Western novels and shit.
and
Yeah. So
if
we're up at Quan Tree, and the Yards want to sacrifice a water buffalo. I mean, it was like rained in. There's nobody in the AO. All right, so they bring in a water buffalo, and they got this big rice straw collar and rope that holds the buffalo's head outstretched like this. And the deal is,
That was a very good person.
well, I've done it several of those. Yeah, I also can do a chicken. Wait till later. So they bring this buffalo in. They got and Boudreaux. You got to remember, Pappy Boudreaux. God bless his soul. He passed a while back. He was the reason that Quan Tree launch site ran. He was a senior E8, mean and nasty like a snake. And Major Slatton, who ran the place, and that him and the Boudreaux and the medic were feeding him some kind of pharmaceutical cocktail that kept him in oblivion until he signed papers. So they ran the launch site. So Boudreaux's in his hooch, and we got this big thing going on with there was 4 teams up there, plus part of the hatchet company, so protecting the launch site. And they have this tet thing. I forget what festival it is, the Festival of Buddha's Shining Balls or whatever. And we're going to sacrifice the water buffalo. So the idea is that one man, one of the Munyards, usually Bong, the shaman, would stand there with this big, long carved, looks like what's that Japanese spear? Assegai, not Assegai, Saga. It's got the big, like, Bowie knife end on it, big, long thing. And then one guy is to cut the buffalo's neck through with that. And the other one is to stab him just behind the rib cage and disembowel the water buffalo at the same time. And Mac, my little gator friend, was the one with the hatchet to cut the buffalo's neck. And I, the chump, was the one with the spear who was going to disembowel. And we were doing the whole thing with the loincloths and all that shit. And Mac takes his swing, cuts the collar and the rope holding the water buffalo down.
Oh,
just about the same time I stick the spear in the side of the Monsieur Buff and disembowel him. And it didn't get all the way through because he turned on a dime. Like 1 minute he was facing that way, and the next minute these 2 really red eyes are like that far away from me. And he's starting that blowing blood, shit and that. And we take off running. We run underneath a Jeep. And the buffalo rushes right over, takes one horn, flips the Jeep off of us, and then starts running around. Finally, we go right past Boudreaux's hooch, and Mac slaps the door so it swings open, and we run around the hooch, and the buffalo goes right into the hooch. And Boudreaux's laying on his bunk reading Zane Grey or whatever it was, and the buffalo came in, just totally trashed his hooch. He had to roll the bed over on top of himself to protect himself, and the buffalo ran out the outside wall. And then finally one of the Yards shot him with an M79 and killed him.
Jesus.
And you know what a piss tube is? Yeah, oh, you do? Well, let's explain to the public what a piss tube is. That's where you take an artillery canister that holds an artillery round, which is made out of aluminum and is about Where am I here? Over this way?
Yeah, you're good.
But,
Oh, wait.
yeah, that big one.
That
And you bury it in the ground, and then people that have to urinate, relieve themselves, come and pee in that tube. So it goes down and becomes part of the environment. The owls are friendly, and the seals are living well. I dug piss tubes for a month then. But there were so many. You could walk out any door of your hooch on that compound, and within 15 steps have a piss tube near you. That's how many we put in. Woodrow, nice guy.
So I want to ask you some questions about your second book here, Whispers in the Tall Grass. I'm going to go through some...
Am I getting too long-winded?
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
No,
Yeah.
This is great.
I want to make sure for my fans so that...
Speaking of which, I'm going to go through some of your favorite questions now, that they're submitting. So Joey says, love what you guys are doing. Thank you, Joey. Anthony says, due to your book, the legacy of Bandit Brandy lives on, at least in my unit. What's your preferred recipe? Spill the beans, Mr. Brokhausen. Thanks. I think you pretty much told your preferred recipe, right?
I didn't give him the dosage.
What's the dosage?
I could do that if he wants to text me on Signal, which the NSA listens to, and I could give him the exact dosage.
Send us an email, Anthony, and we'll get to you on that. Douglas says, does Uncle Nick have the pocket knife that he found in the World War II plane wreckage still, made by Lague, with the B on it?
Legionnaire, the classic knife maker for the French military.
And that's a story you tell in this book. Do you want to talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, it was a dry hole. We went up on, you got to remember the Ashau runs up north, and it climbs up into the Laotian Plateau in a series of steps. Like 30 meters and a 10 meter wide step, and then 30 meters and 10 meters, or 10 meters, whatever it was. And at the far end of that is the area that slices off into northern Laos. And I don't know how we got this target. I have no idea at all. I don't know what they were looking for. It was an area recon to go in and see who's there. And we went in, and the target folders were, Ken Holmes would know, because I think he was the AST on that. It was the newest report, AAR, on it was like 1965 or something like that. And we're going, shit, okay, probably nothing there. We're going to have a barbecue, call in the highway patrol, have a good time, get some addresses. And we launched in there, we got in, and it was, from the very beginning, it was spooky. We got on the ground, we started moving. Within the first 500 meters, the yards were all jittery. They're, what's wrong, Mac? And he goes, go check with Bond. So I go back to Bond, the shaman, and I go, what's going on? He goes, oh, bad people, snake people. What the fuck are snake people? Oh, no, bad. Number 10,000. So we go a little bit further, and we finally worked our way. There was a cleft, narrow gorge going up to the Laotian Plateau. And it got narrower and narrower the farther you climbed up. And we climbed up that for about thick, maybe a little more. And as it kept going, big tumble boulders, steep cliffs on both sides, working our way up in that. And we got to this place where we found this cave. And this cave was, the point came back, and I think the point was Sampat. And Sampat came back, and his eyes are about this big around. And he's going, number 10. I go, what do you mean number 10? Number 10. He goes and talks to Kuman, and then Kuman comes over, number 10,000. That means really, really bad. So we go up and we look at it, and it goes back in maybe 20 feet, 30 feet, something like that. And in the back is, best I can describe it as a shrine. There's a bamboo pole, and hanging from it is the remains of a leather helmet, plate helmet, and a pair of goggles. And there's all kinds of, there's bear skulls in there, you know, bamboo bears. And we're like going, and everything's covered with mold, everything, mold and lichens and moss, whatever, went in there. So I started to go inside, and Kuhlman grabs my arm. Oh, dumb tent, don't go in. So Bong comes up, the shaman, and goes, you know, we must leave now. So I'm still looking at this thing, and I'm going, wow, that's weird. As we climbed up the escarpment, got on top, we went about 300-400 meters, and we stumbled across an old French fighter plane from circa 1950s. It's got that really weird dark green paint on it and that they use. The hell was it? It wasn't a P-47. It was something like they called a Buffalo or something that the frogs made. Had a coffee maker in the cockpit and a football issue. And so we're all over it. You know, the canopy's half slid open, climbed in top, and that. And I got down inside, and I'm digging around because all U.S. fighter planes that went down, underneath the ejection seat was a drawer that had a .22 caliber silenced pistol, rations, antibiotics, and in the form of blank slugs, coins, whatever. Usually around, in those days, $15,000 to $20,000, whatever. But it was at 35 an ounce. It was a lot of gold. So when we went in on Rex, we always, well, we're there. We're doing the government's work. Why not check, right? So we went underneath the seat, and I found the tray was still there. It had been pulled out. It was the sliders were there, but the tray was gone. We later found it over by the starboard wing, and there were down in between the seat brackets, and that was this knife. It was all rusted in there from the weather, and that. I dug it out. And it's a langolo, and it means bumblebee, and they are the official knife maker for the French military. I still have it to this day. Every once in a while, I go out and I prick myself with it just to make sure I'm still here.
And the snake people, it turned out that they were another Montagnard tribe, right?
The yards were scared to death of them. They said, yo, number 10, we don't look at them. I found out later that Kuhlman and Chua had both looked up from where they were moving. There was a snake person like within 5 feet of them, and they immediately cast their eyes down. They put it this way: the North Vietnamese weren't in that area for a reason. And when we lifted out, I remember looking back down at the LZ. And two guys showed up, two Montagnards, primitives. You know, one of them was carrying a MAC-49 submachine gun, French, from the French Indochina War, and the other guy was carrying bow, arrow, blowgun, and the usual man jewelry in that. And I was like looking down and go, wow, glad I got out of there.
Yeah,
it's like looking into the past. Yeah,
I first thought they were Democrats.
Was the fear because of like superstition? Was it because
they were headhunter cannibals?
Okay,
that's what I got out of Bong. When we got back to the site, I had to go through like 2 days of cleansing with herb smoke and all that bullshit, rubbing copper pennies on my forehead and my pecker and whatever. Bong told me, he said, these people eat other people and they take the heads. And we all know that. And we're all scared shitless of them, basically what it boiled down.
Wild. Sure. So AJ Gamble says, thanks for another epic guest. Love his books.
Douglas Pack had a second part of that question. What happened to your SOG knife you were wearing on the cover of We Few?
Gone.
Gone?
Gone. First of all, the Cisco knives that they produce for the SOG knives and that wouldn't hold an edge, and they broke a lot. So, I wore the SOG knife probably half my time there, and then I switched over to a K-bar. And, that actually, boys, what I have here is
A Fairbairn 6.
a knife that was made for me by a fan who's a master knife smith. That's all Damascene steel, and that's a copy of the M42 original Commando knife.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
So if any of you are out there thinking about maybe, lauding my authorial qualities and that, a knife would be nice.
So, Nick, did you start using a K-bar because in your heart of hearts you wanted to be a Marine?
No, actually, I wanted to be a cook in the Navy. And they got sharper cutlery for sure.
Right.
So, why not?
Andrew
It was
asks,
either that or be an exotic dancer in Berlin.
Andrew says, I need to hear more about the Zaire Jumpmaster course that did not go well.
Jumpmaster course?
In Zaire?
Oh, no, you don't, young man.
All right, that's okay. He has another question. He's saying about you drinking absinthe. He says, what is he, an 1890s bohemian crypto-Marxist literature professor?
So he's answering like he's on one of the fucking game shows. What is that? What was 18th century, 19th century literature professor?
An 1890s bohemian crypto-Marxist literature professor.
That was me. Shut up. I'm telling you, this guy's a troll. He's from the Democratic Party. Oh yeah, we know Renee. We know where he lives. We know where his children go to school.
Hammer and Nails, thank you for the donation. So Nick, a lot of
somebody donated to you guys because of us?
Yeah, they did.
We're getting
the new
mad
book.
rich because of you. We're retiring after this show,
yeah.
Nick.
Yeah, well, we need to get into the new book too.
Yes,
We will. That's what we're going to talk on the bonus segment. I just want to, for a few minutes, you're drinking toxic masculinity, just slurping it down. You're full of toxic masculinity, Nick.
But you look at them; they're measuring the bottle. Love that.
Whispers in the Tall Grass. This book starts off like you guys are in a lot of trouble, your team. And a lot of people keep asking in the chat here, what the hell did Cookie do, your teammate, that got you guys in so much trouble?
Oh no, I don't know to this very day.
Really?
Nobody ever gave up the secret of what Cookie did. I know that him and Rocky Sherman were involved in it. The Ranger, the little Sicilian cab driver. But whatever they did inside, nobody would talk to him. I mean, House 10, when they threw us out, the Air Force crew that flew up, they knew. Oh, well, you are the guy. So, yeah, well, and when we got on the ground, Captain Rob, who was formerly in the Phoenix Project and is God bless his soul, he passed here last year and that, but he was an enigma. He wouldn't even tell us. He just snickered at us and went, so you guys are in trouble. Never found out. Don't want to know. I think it involved a manatee and a pre-teenage girl or something. I don't know.
So a lot of what you write about in this book, aside from the snake people, that insane story, is your team working to tap enemy commo lines with like induction cables. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that particular chapter where I was laying with my ass hanging out all over the place. The first wiretaps we had were god awful devices. They were probably, they 13 inches long, 4 inches thick, had some kind of reel-to-reel bullshit on them and that, all under cover. And they would only last for 6 or 8 hours, and then you had to go back and pull the spools off and put them back. And then they came out with a smaller unit that was really great. And it would also, the normal wiretap had like a pair of alligator clips that had like a long prong, and you put it into the wire, and then it would pick everything up. It was some kind of radio 05B, electromagnetic flux, very girly, whatnot. And then they came out with one that actually wrapped around the wire, and coaxial cable. And it still had little teeth in it. But the big thing about it was the little cassettes would last for 24 hours. So I only did one. I did one successful wiretap and another one that didn't work out. So where we didn't get any traffic at all. And they were a good idea because the North Vietnamese knew if they came up on the air, was it Moonbeam or somebody like that, be up there, listening to what they were saying, doing the RDF and all that. So they went to using hardwire and courier. That's why we tried to do the prisoner snatchers, because we knew they weren't talking on the radio. They'd use couriers. If you drop bombs on their little asses, they'd get the couriers up and moving, telling everybody what to do before they got up on the air. So the wiretaps it was a tool, it's a useful tool. Some guys got good traffic. Some of us got mediocre traffic. Some of us got, doggy porn out of Denmark. Who knows?
I think it was the first one you did. You talk about how you were sitting there because someone has to have eyes on the tap, right, or be close by.
I went down to change the tape,
and that was when the NVA were like doing a class.
Yeah. They came up. I was laying there sweating bullets, and you had to go down, change the tape. They put it in the day before, and I'd changed the tape once. And then I was going back the next day to change the tape. Mac decided I was the best one because I was the best crawler. I could crawl without bruising the underbrush. And this is how he's explaining it to me.
Right.
And him and Cookie are up there with the rest of the headhunters, and they're covering me. And you got to move real slow. And you got to remember, the other guy is trying to stay alive just as much as you are. And they're living in that environment that you're living in. Mm-hmm. So every little thing like this, insect stopping, talking, the bush goes silent, bruises on plants and that, all are indicators of just how close you are to getting your guts blown away. So we're real careful about moving. And it might take you, normally you can go from here to 25 meters in a couple of minutes or a minute. There, it might take you half a day to get there. So, but still within the constraints of what you got to do. So I'm down at the thing. I get the tape out. I pull the old tape, put a new tape in, and I'm on my way back up the hill. Excuse me. About 15 yards from where the tap is. And I hear these people coming up the trail. Well, first thing I hear is a click on the emergency radio, the York 10, which means, watch your ass, something's happening. And I go still, and I hear these people come up from below me and behind me. And it's about, first thing that came was two guys with the headphones and the minesweeper looking device that they use to check the load loss on the line. That basically tells you whether there's a tap on or not, right? And they're going along the wire, and then they left. And then I started crawling back uphill, and like 15 minutes later, here they come. And I remember, I'm trying to move slow at the same time, and they come up with about 20, 25 people, and they sit down on this little hillside on the other side of the trail, and they start giving a class. I mean, I've been in enough classes. I don't care if it's in Lithuanian. I know what's going on. So I'm sitting there going, oh, shit. And they go on, and then I hear a commotion, and then typical NCO shit. I hear this guy over to the side going, furry words. And then a couple of slaps. So then they come down, they break down, and they move off. And I finally get back up to the top of the hill, and I ask Mac, I go, what's going on? He goes, well, they came back up to give a class evidently, and we were laying there, and we were watching to make sure they didn't see. I've never felt so exposed in my life. I was trying to be a dandelion. I didn't make it. And a couple of privates fell asleep in the back rank and that. And I guess one of the NCOs went back there and jacked their ass up. Yeah, little shit, wake up, you know. And then they moved on, and we were getting up there. We were going to try and pull the tap. Said, no, we'll leave it here for 24 hours. We'll come back and get it. And when I put it in, I put a toe pop. You know what a toe popper is?
Mm-hmm. Little landmine, yeah.
That is a landmine designed to remove your lower leg and your junk. So that's what they put in there, and then I mousetrapped the whole thing. And we said, well, we'll just leave it in there. We'll come back in 24 hours. We got back up on top, and not 15 minutes later, before we were ready to move, 40 guys came up, and these were not a class. They were looking for us. Either they noticed me, you know, oh, look, there's a meat-eating gringo laying over there with his butt showing, or they noticed a line loss or whatever, and they started hunting us, and they found the tap. And when they found the tap, the guy picked it up and blew up him or whoever was near it. And then we threw grenades and never shoot, throw grenades. Remember, grenades, you don't have to clean afterwards. So, and they don't give away your position. They threw the grenades down there. Cook yelled up, there was a couple of them wounded. He yelled up at Mac, you want me to go get one of the bodies? He said, no, we got to get out of here. So we hauled ass, and for the next, I don't know, 7-8 hours, we were on the run with them on us, trying to box us in. But that was the one successful wiretap. We got about 18 hours of real good traffic on that tape, where they could say, well, yeah, this is the 309th Hot Rocket Division. The commander's got piles.
And that coax cable was running along a ridge between two fairly substantial.
It ran all the way down that valley. Mm-hmm. There was a juncture of 6 trails where we knew that they were in there. They have bunker complexes and all that. We were slightly northwest of there, up on the ridge where the main high-speed trails that would be used by the couriers and people moving troops around. And it was right along the trail. You know how I found it? I was watching as my 1-0 I had spent most of my Vietnam career picking up after he tripped over something, tripped over the wire, and fell down the slope. That's how we found it.
Nick, we're just kind of scratching the surface of both of these books, but I mean, that's okay because people can go and read them for themselves. Before we're going to talk about your new book coming out later this year in detail on the bonus segment, with your co-author and partner, Jeff Miller. But for just the mainstream audience, the big bad world out there, could you give a little bit, just a short synopsis of what the new book is about in the title?
First of all, I'd like to thank my fans and those of you that hate me, because it makes my life, worth living. And I thank you all for that. That would be my co-author, who I've been together for 50 years. It's worse than a bad marriage. But anyway, the second book is called Vagabonds, Tourists in the Heart of Darkness. What? Third book. What the hell is he doing with this finger? Is that the white supremacist thing?
It's a code signal.
What the hell is that?
No, it's a we few Whispers of the Tall Grass, Vagabonds.
Vagabonds is the third book. right? Did I miss something there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool. So, Jeff Miller and I were in Special Forces at the 10th Group, and we did a lot of amazing things while we were there. And then after we got out of the military, we decided to do something with our lives. And in those days, there was no contractor industry run by the FBI and the rent-a-cops. So we had to invent our own. In those days, you had to find a project, see somebody that needed something, convince them that you were the solution, and then go on from there. So the book is snippets of 40 years of doing that. You know, becoming consultants to the mining industry, helping people recover kidnapped victims, verifying computers. What was another thing? With, it was something there with doing something with virgins. I don't know. But the third book is about our wanderings for 40 years.
When is the book due out? What's the release date, and where can people go?
Well, wait. I'll put my co-author on.
Yes.
Who is extremely handsome and invented tweed.
I didn't tell you to leave.
Hey,
Oh,
good evening, Jeff.
hello.
So where can people go and
There you go.
where can people go and pre-order Vagabonds?
Amazon right now. I'm sure. I'm trying to get myself centered here.
It's all good.
I'm sure once it comes out, it'll be in all the normal book purchasing areas. But right now, it's available for pre-order on Amazon.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All Vagabonds, Tourists in the Heart of Darkness, and it's published by a company called Casemate out of London.
Yep. So we're going to talk about Vagabonds in depth with you and Nick on the bonus segment. For everyone who joined us live tonight out there, I just want to say thanks for coming, spending some time with us and Nick. Please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tell your friends about the channel, tell your dog about it, spread it around as much as you can. And down in the description, there's a link to our Patreon page if you want to get involved in supporting the channel and get access to our bonus segments. Like the one we're going to do with Nick and Jeff in just a moment here.
Jeff, did you say Vagabonds Tourist in the Heart of Darkness?
Tourists in the Heart of Darkness, yes.
Dave, did I forget anything to mention anything here tonight?
No, I don't think so. Do we have any more questions?
No,
I don't know what I'm doing.
And
No
next
So
week,
sit down and something will happen.
next week, episode 77, we're going to have John Gardner on, who is the author of The Fading Light. He served in the Australian SAS and the Rhodesian SAS, and then South African Special Forces, and became something, the pejorative term, a mercenary, if you will, after all of that. So he will be on next Friday. We're excited to have him in here. I'm like halfway through his book. It's super. So Jeff, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone who sponsors the show, we will see you guys for the bonus segment. So thank you, everyone.
That's it?
No,
They're going to kick us
the
off?
bonus segment is
Oh, the
coming.
bonus segment.
We are the bonus segment.
Oh, cool.
I am the bonus segment. I don't know what the hell